Welcome to this week's episode of On Record PR. You are here with your hosts, Jennifer Simpson-Carr and Gina Rubel. Hi, Gina.
Hello, Jennifer. You've had an AI in legal conference whirlwind these past few weeks, huh?
Yes, it has been busy. You and I were at CCBJ a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where AI was the topic of the keynote. And then the following week, I was in Atlanta for the Legal Marketing Association Southeast AI Intensive, which was 100 people from 20 states, 41 law firms, service partners.
Wow, that's fantastic. LMA Southeast did a fantastic job from what I hear.
Yeah, and my panel spoke on the client journey and how generative AI has changed that. And so the whole day was AI. And then this week, Legal Week, we're recording this episode to release on Monday, March 16th. So we're about halfway through Legal Week, but there are definitely some key themes that have come through between the AI for these conferences.
So why don't we talk about let's pick three big themes that emerged from the events and what they mean for law firms and their clients. And I'm picking three because we can probably talk forever.
Yes.
But I do know that there are a few that you said were key, and you're going to help educate me as well, since I wasn't there. So Jen, first, AI is changing where legal value lives. Historically, a lot of legal work has been centered around tasks like research, document review, drafting, and data analysis. Frankly, a lot of what's done by younger lawyers, how's that changing?
Yeah, so what was interesting between the three conferences is AI is not a future conversation. It is changing fundamentally how legal work gets done. So AI, one of the themes is that it's very good at accelerating many of these routine tasks. It can summarize documents, analyze large volumes of information, generate drafts, and provide insights much more quickly than anyone could prior to AI. But the real impact that continue to come through the conversations and the panels is that clients of law firms are starting to value different things from their lawyers. So, what do I mean by that? Instead of paying primarily for the time spent, the billable hour, performing a task, clients are now increasingly looking for judgment, strategic guidance, and advice. And to be clear, those things have always been a priority for clients. What AI has changed in the conversation and in the day-to-day work is that outside counsel's role is shifting from, previously handling all of the work, from producing work product to interpreting it, to now, in many cases, lawyers only handling interpretation and judgment. So AI can help generate the information, but lawyers provide the context. So what does it mean? What risks it raises? What decisions clients should make? One presenter at a GC workshop I sat in on gave a great concrete example of responding to a demand letter in 15 minutes instead of 2.5 hours, which it normally took. And that frees up time for higher value thinking and problem solving for his team.
And that really is where value lives. And I guess we have the dilemma of, there's a few dilemmas here. How do you get the younger lawyers? And Jennifer, I don't think we're going to answer this. It's more hypothetical or rhetorical, I should say. But how do we solve the dilemma about young lawyers getting the experience they need to become those high value strategic thinkers? One. And that's an industry question across the board. I don't know if it came up in the three conferences that you attended or in your conversations. But another question down the line is really, how does this affect all professional services, even our own agencies? So these are things that we have to be thinking about value.
And we can definitely address those in this conversation. I will say, to tie it back to the first theme, the lawyers and law firms who will thrive in this environment, to me, are the ones who combine the legal expertise with the business judgment and strategic thinking that these clients are now specifically looking for as the core of the work.
I agree. I also, there's so much about teaching the machine learning properly, and there are just so many issues, but I agree with you 100% there. And so I'm curious, what were some of the conversations around what this means for law firms operationally?
Sure. So law firms need to rethink how work is structured. If technology handles more of the routine work, lawyers should be spending more time on complex problem solving, client counseling, strategic advice. Really, what this means is that firms may need to rethink how they talk about value with their clients, moving away from hours worked towards outcomes and insights delivered. The billable hour was a big topic of conversation. I will say no one had the answers, but the conversation around billing was a thread through all of the panels. And the firms that again start to think about how to communicate around outcomes and insights delivered versus how much time they worked are starting to become more and more interesting to clients.
You know, what's so interesting, Jennifer, is that we've been talking about what we used to term AFAs, which is now out of vogue, the alternative fee arrangements, for years and years and years. And some firms have done it somewhat successfully based on outcomes. I think those are either firms or practice groups that can really manage scope of a particular matter. Let's say it's filing a trademark, or yeah, and I don't know that to be true either. I've never practiced in IP law. I'm just throwing an example out there. But it's not just law firms that struggle with that. We struggle with the same thing. We serve law firms. So, we've been having these same conversations. So I say that to say to the listeners, we deal with the same challenges and vulnerabilities, and it's not an easy answer. So, and because we work with the same types of firms that bill for their expertise the same way, it's an ongoing struggle. And so as the owner of this agency, I just want to say to the law firms listening, it's not easily solved. And I know even our business colleagues in the C-suite at law firms, like, we need to move here. It's not that easy. How many times you and I have tried to negotiate those contracts with law firm clients and they say, nope, we want it to be on an hour. Or then we say, no, we need it to be hourly because there's going to be a ton of scope creep here. So I just throw that out there.
I appreciate you saying that, Gina, because something that I also carried through these 3 conferences, and it was actually stated at several panels. If someone tells you that they have all the answers around AI, and I'm paraphrasing, run in the other
It's the
direction.
same thing we were saying about social media
Yes.
in the early 2000s. If somebody called themselves a social media expert, run. And I would say the same is still true today, because social media platforms own the way they work and change them daily. So when we talk about algorithms, they change constantly. So it's no different with AI, and it's never going to be different with any technology. There will be people who have more expertise.
Absolutely.
And others who have less. But I mean, you almost have to have an expert for every single platform. And then, and I'm going to diverge a second, then you have to figure out, what are your corporate, not just mission and vision, but values, and which technology platforms are you going to choose based on those values? And again, a dilemma that has just come up recently this week with one of the platforms that we use being owned by an organization that is a large contributor to a particular administration, and things that perhaps members of the team don't support, and another that is willing to fight the administration as David and Goliath. So anyway, without getting into politics, I just want to say that those are also things that from an operational perspective, some firms are grappling with.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
of course I digressed, but I know there are other major themes often overlooked. And technology doesn't fix a broken process. So what else did you see there or did you learn that you want to share?
So that was one of the most practical discussions of Legal Week so far and the other two conferences. Many organizations start their innovation journey by buying a new tool, especially now that AI is the big topic. But if the underlying workflow is not efficient, is poorly understood, technology just adds to the inefficiency. There was a great panel on exactly this. So what I learned and what I think is really important to share is that instead of starting with the technology, law firms and organizations need to start with the problem. They need to reverse the order in which they are approaching this. So the panel I mentioned focused on design thinking, essentially creating a framework for understanding the real problem before designing a solution. So they shared a couple of questions to prompt this, which are, what problem are we actually trying to solve? Where are the real pain points in the process, and who is closest to the work? And what was interesting is sometimes the people who understand the problems aren't necessarily the senior lawyers leading these teams. Examples they gave are legal operations professionals, a billing specialist, someone who is working in the workflow every single day. So when organizations involve the people who are part of that daily process early, they often uncover insights that lead to much better solutions and outcomes. One panelist actually made the point that most AI adoptions struggle because organizations start with, give me a tool, give me an AI tool, give me generative AI, instead of asking, what process they are actually trying to improve and how their people will actually use the tool.
It's so true. And, Jennifer, it harkens back to 3 weeks ago at the Corporate Counsel Business Journal's Women's Conference, where Sharon Guy was the keynote, and she wrote the book, How to Do More with Less, Future-Proofing Yourself in an AI-Powered World. And I remember her saying, how many of you feel more productive and have gotten time back?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody in the room, and remember, these are all GCs and in-house attorneys and legal support providers, professionals. Nobody raised their hand. I feel more overwhelmed with it because now I got to figure out how to use it, which ones are correct for our team, test, have meeting after meeting with members. It's just nonstop. And it can't just be me or you or Leslie Richards, our CIO. It has to involve, production management, process management, IT, CFO, all of that's involved. So it really is both overwhelming, somewhat exciting. I do like getting things done more quickly.
Yes.
I really do enjoy that piece when done within the constraints that we've at Furia Rubel, as you know, Jennifer, we've built in a ton of constraints and safety rails and guidelines for our team. So I think to sum up a formula, if I will, for what you heard in these last three conferences, is that it's still about people first, process second, and technology third. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. It's exactly it. And I think that, at Legal Week, there were Chatham House rules, but Catherine Allman McDonough actually went through the design process thinking. I got a big hug from her, which was really nice.
You know how much I love her, and I took her yellow belt and another one of her courses, and they were both brilliant.
It was a really great panel, and so that specific panel addressed exactly what you said, which is people, process, technology, and essentially, again, not citing anyone specifically to honor kind of the wishes of not quoting people, but, generally to sum it up, when you approach innovation in that order, technology becomes much more effective. That was really the sentiment. There were panelists that made the point that AI adoption struggle because they just don't have the right order of how to approach solutions. So it's more of a pattern and something that they shared as a takeaway, but approach things in that order and you're much more likely to succeed with your technology.
I love that. And they're just all such brilliant people. So Jen, let's pause here for a break from our sponsor.
Sounds good.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses worldwide. With an expert team positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by an international faculty, Furia Rubel enhances our clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Gina Rubel and Jennifer Simpson-Carr talking about AI in legal. And we've talked about some of the key takeaways, some from conferences over the last 3 weeks. The next topic, Jennifer, I'd really like to talk about is culture, collaboration, and talent. How does this fit into the AI conversation?
So tying back to the second theme, AI adoption is not just a technology change, it's a change management challenge. It's the people. So kind of alluding to what I said earlier, even the best tools will not succeed if the people don't understand them, if the people don't trust them, and if they don't know how to use them effectively. I think what comes to mind is, all of these years we rolled out CRMs in law firms, and we always said, oh, garbage in, garbage out. Not exactly the same, but it was the kind of the analogy that came to mind, which is you have to have your people bought into the fact that this tool is going to help improve a challenge. So organizations, again, in law firms that are making the most progress are focusing heavily on training, experimentation, and cross-functional collaboration.
It's so interesting. So does that mean that the lawyers are working more closely with the technologists and the legal operations teams?
Yes. So breaking down those silos, it's a cliche, but it's what I heard. Legal work is becoming more interdisciplinary. So it's not just the lawyers that are in the room and in these conversations, it's the teams that you just mentioned. So the most successful teams bring together the lawyers, technologists, operations professionals, if they have data strategists, and they rethink and redesign workflows together. Many of the panelists discuss the need for a culture of continuous learning and a culture of constant experimentation. I will say as a side note, there's psychological safety that came up that is really necessary for those two things to happen. But panelists emphasize that the people that are allowed to experiment without feeling like they will be penalized are those who can help move your firm and your teams towards real progress.
And I want to add to that from somebody who's run a company and worked with hundreds of law firms over the last 30 years. It's not just psychological safety for the individual. It's really also for the professionals and lawyers in particular who are billable. How do they get rewarded for that time and energy? Because all too often we see lawyers who serve in a marketing capacity, a BD capacity, and it doesn't go against billables. There's no benefit other than it might be looked at during bonus time or things like that. So it's not just, I think what we need to move away from in the legal arena is less worry about who's going to be slapped on the hand and more worry about how are we going to thank people for doing what they need to do to succeed every single day. that's a whole nother thing. So I want to get back to something I asked you earlier, Jennifer. How does this all impact young lawyers about training, getting them the experience they need?
Yeah, I'm glad we came back to this because when you brought it up early, I really wanted to touch on this. It was an important conversation and it came up in multiple sessions. The Traditionally, early career lawyers developed experience by doing things like document review, first drafts. Everyone was in the office together. You could walk down the hall and ask questions. And so if AI starts handling more of that work, firms have to rethink how they train this next generation. It might mean more mentorship, scenario-based learning, and early exposure to strategic client work.
And as a former litigator, I do want to share that the research side and understanding how to pull data is more important today than ever. And I'm going back over 30 years when I was taught what a Boolean search was for Westlaw. Those have become more important today for how we think both. And there's a lot of people out there who would absolutely disagree with this, Jennifer, and they would say, no, 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 you need to be focused on, natural language. The truth is, natural language, we don't all speak the same way. So when you can boil down, for example, a prompt in a system to something similar to a Boolean search, I'm looking for this, not that, keep it professional, not, all of those pieces. So it's a mix of both conventions. If they get that training and how to discern accuracy, how to put in the prompt, do not make things up, do not pull from outside, all of those things. It's so important. So to me, research and how to communicate is more important today than ever. And I'll give you an example internally. PR doesn't equal press release. Right? Simple. But so these are things that we need to really be thinking about, and how those future lawyers are developing skills differently than those of us who were trained even 5 years ago, frankly.
So what you just said touched on so many things that could take me on all
I know,
these
we can
different
go
paths.
on for way too long.
Yes. I will say the one thing that comes to mind, and it just supports your point, is that during one of the GC workshops, we had one of the slides up where you could scan your phone, and the panelists asked you to type in the number one word that concerns you about using AI, and hallucination on the word, but cloud remained the largest word throughout, the few minutes. But it goes back to exactly what you just said. So what I thought was interesting is many of the panelists said firms need to take a much more intentional approach to training and development of all people, but particularly their more junior lawyers. An example that one of the panelists shared was contract review and NDAs. It's an area of work where they said AI can create major gains by handling repetitive first pass work. And this would allow junior lawyers to spend more time on matters like M&A or higher value work. It was a pretty practical example, not of just using AI to save time, but kind of directly related to talent and moving forward in a way that's really impactful for the business and for their careers. One of the other examples I thought was really interesting was some of the panelists mentioned intentional scenario training, because AI can handle some of the traditional learning by doing tasks. Some panelists referred to this approach as AI assisted learning or having practice labs, which I thought was an interesting way to look at it. A couple of examples of this are AI powered negotiation simulations where associates can practice responding to offers and counter offers. Litigation response simulations where associates received a draft motion or opposing counsel email, and they have to come up with the next steps in this scenario. regulatory impact exercises where associates analyze how a new rule affects a client's business. It really helped me look at AI for a moment as a simulator, like a simulation tool to help progress the learning and advancement in a way that provides an opportunity for more experienced lawyers and junior lawyers to work through scenarios that the junior lawyers may not have access to because, again, not to go down a rabbit hole, but I heard instances and conversations where clients aren't paying for first through fifth year associates. They don't want to see it on their bill. And so just using that as kind of an anecdote, then turning real world scenarios into learning opportunities using AI as a simulation so that there's still access to that analytical thinking that helps junior lawyers start to develop those skills. But again,
I know it's a rabbit hole, but I'm just going to say this. It's a no-win situation because the firms still have to pay for all that staff and they're not going to foot the bill. So they're just going to raise the rates of their top billable lawyers so that they can cover the costs of their more junior lawyers. And that's, I mean, it's business 101. You still have to cover your costs. So it's an interesting dilemma, and it's a catch-22. That being said, I think we're getting really close to time. So I just want to kind of wrap it up a little bit. So what I think I'm hearing, Jennifer, is that AI isn't just introducing new tools, it's creating an opportunity to rethink how legal services are delivered. Do you agree?
I do. And the firms, again, that succeed aren't the ones necessarily who are buying all the tools and using all of the technology. They are the ones who are focusing on the people that they have, the culture, the processes that they are looking to improve or become more efficient, and client value, and then identifying technologies that will support those goals.
Jennifer, I am so grateful to you. I know we got to go to one of the conferences together, but you're like the eyes and ears of the agency. And I love that, we divide and conquer. We can't be everywhere all the time. So getting this information from you and sharing it with me and our audience is, these are great learnings. Thank you.
I'm happy to do it. And thank you, of course, to our listeners. If you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with a friend or colleague, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And we will see you next time.
See you next time, Jen.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson-Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Furia Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Isabel Horan and Christian Yamula. Visit www.onrecordpr.com for resources and more information.